Loran, thank you everybody for being here. I'm Jim Hallock, and I've been building with Earth Blocks since 1994, exclusively with one mistake. I did a log kit one time in New Mexico. Other than that, it's always been Earth Blocks. I've got two companies, as you can see up here. I've been in Texas for about 6 years. I love Texas, and that's Earth Block Texas. But I've also started a company in Colorado with a partner, Lisa Schroeder, Colorado Earth. And she's been in Adobe's for decades, and I've been in Earth Blocks for decades, so we thought it'd be pretty cool to make them at the same plant. Now this is a workshop in San Antonio. I did about a dozen of them at AECT back in the early part of the century. Next. This is basically the outline of what we're going to do. We don't want to spend too much time on this. You can look real quickly because I've probably got too many slides and I tend to get too talkative. And I see Loran with the hook in her hand. So we'll skip this one and go. This is a list of benefits. Some of you, if any of you seen the website or stuff, this is just a list of benefits that Tom Tabor actually helped me put together years ago. And so, what if there was construction technology that was fireproof, soundproof, bug-proof, keep going, bulletproof? It is. Breathable. This is your skin breathes and your walls should too. This is about absorbing and releasing water vapor. Mold resistant, non-toxic, earth, low energy to build the product and also to live in it. Very low embodied energy. I just noticed this little chart up here from some previous meeting. This is real interesting. Along these lines, here we've got, did you just do this, Loran?
From Tim's presentation.
Tim White.
Oh, great. Well, it works. We're all about earth and construction, so this works for all reinforced concrete at 179,000 BTUs per cubic foot, polyurethane board 290,000 BTUs per pound, and earth and straw at 30 BTUs per pound. Carbon footprint, that's what we're talking about here. Next. Low maintenance, don't you feel for these people? Really? Just, God. Structurally sound blocks. The New Mexico code is 300 PSI. We average around 15 to 1700 PSI. At a record setter of 2,500 per time. We're off the scale. We're the third little pig, okay, the smart pig. You know, we don't. The wolf can't blow it down, and that's us. Durable. The oldest buildings on the planet are made of earth, of course. Still should be. Biodegradable, obviously. Regulates humidity. Again, this has partly to do with the ability to absorb and release water vapor. Clay has an equilibrium moisture content that it's trying to maintain, so it's going to help you in this regard. Temperature, cool in the summer. That's what we're about, especially here in Texas. Oops. Locally available. Most places have soil. And then it's also locally available pretty much, Christine, worldwide. You know, there's about 65% of the Earth's surface, I read somewhere, can make Earth blocks, but we'll see. Wouldn't that be great if you had a building material like that? You know? Well, we have it, you know, and I'm pushing Earth blocks, but it's also true of Ron's rammed earth. It's also true of Adobe's. I saw a big website recently. I got alerted to it by somebody. It was all about the benefits of rammed earth, and this website started with those 10 slides. Hey, those look just like mine. And so I got a hold of the guy, and he said, "Oh, I'm glad to hear from you. I'll give you some credit, blah, blah, blah." And he did. It was good. So this is in Colorado at our plant outside of Golden, between Golden and Nevada. And Coors plants right there. These are our compressed earth blocks, and those are Lisa's Adobe's side by side. And we're pretty proud to do that just because there's this kind of little struggle all the time in New Mexico between the Adobe guys and the press block guys about who's better, you know, that kind of stuff. It's just doing both. Okay. Updates from Texas. This is just going to be a little history of some houses that I've built in Texas. This is the smallest building I ever built, although we're going to build a smaller one in June in Colorado. That's 200 square feet, and it was in a backyard in San Antonio. Testing out the barrel roof here, worked out. Next. This is also in San Antonio on Eisenhower. These are some blocks under, walls and blocks under production. This is the finished product. This is Esperanza, over just a few blocks away, getting started. And this isn't the finished product, but this was right before a little fiesta or something. Blanco, or as we call it in Texas, Blanco. This is a big one and a nice one. Bastrop. There's stories about this one, and anybody wants to know the stories, I can tell you after class. But it's a good one. This is in Fredericksburg. Beverly and I wrote a paper about this one for Earth USA a couple of years ago, because I took all the materials that were in it, and we took the percentages of concrete and steel and wood and earth, and I don't remember, 72% or
At least.
70 or 80% earth. The roof was earth, the walls were earth, and I think about 3% wood, which was the lintels. That's a good one. Next. This is the same one from the inside, in a rough state. And this is in welfare, again, barrel vault, earth block barrel vault roof, and in construction and done. Maru, or Maria, as I call her, did this, and she went to one of the workshops in San Antonio, and she drank the Kool-Aid. She wanted it all. So it had earthen roof, earthen walls, earthen floor, lime plaster on the outside, clay plaster on the inside, composting toilet, solar panels. The whole enchilada. That's what I nicknamed this building. The whole enchilada. She did it all. It was pretty cool. Next. This is in Wimberley, Texas. This is a real good one. Under construction and then finished. I was just talking to some folks out in the hall about this roof. Charles, the owner, was a real research maniac and he was trying to stay cool in Texas, and he put a roof on there that was just spectacular as far as staying cool. We were plastering the outside. At one point, it was in the spring. It wasn't real hot yet, but we had a little 3-day stretch where it was 90 every day. And I walked inside, and I was like, uh-oh. I built a house that's too cold in Texas. It was quite cool in there, quite cool. And but he's real happy. But he and his wife go back to Switzerland regularly. They went for 3 months last summer, and they had a little logger in there so they could read the temperature in the house while they were in Switzerland. And it never broke 80. It was closed up, for 3 months. It never broke 80. So it's pretty good. Next. The Queen. This is in Austin. Interestingly enough, this is Becky Kavanaugh, the previous client that you just saw, Charles Kavanaugh. They're brother and sister, but they came to me separately. It was wild. And now here they are, living 40 miles apart in Earth Block houses. Next. So, experiencing in Texas, and then I was given this opportunity, really, that was kind of, I can't pass it up. A fellow in Colorado was willing to not give, but allow us to use an acre of land, and he owns a quarry, and so we got this acre of land, and all the free dirt we could use. It's perfect dirt. So we just went, well, we need to set up a block plan. That's all there is to it. And so that was the start of Colorado Earth. Here it is. The soil, as far as the embodied energy of Beverly, this is the soil we're using for the blocks, and it's coming from right there. It's about 3/4 of a mile. So as far as getting your materials locally, we did well there. And they bring it to us pre-screened to 3/4 of an inch, which isn't too bad, but not really good enough. And so we could make the blocks with it, but they didn't look crispy, you know, and it's part of appearance is part of the deal. So Charlie, our benefactor, came by and said, well, how do you like the dirt? I said, oh man, it's great. The sand content, the clay content, it's great. But I said, do you suppose you can get those guys to screen it a little finer, you know, before they bring it and just make crispier blocks? And he said, no, I can't. So let me think about it. And a couple days later, this screener showed up. He said, will this help? That'll do it, you know. So we can screen this 3/4 down to a half or 3/8 or whatever we want, just about as fast as we can use it. So it's made a huge economic difference in the blocks, because harvesting the soil, screening the soil, processing the soil, all that kind of stuff is a big part of the project. But Christine's back there with yep. And so to take that whole business out of it, that I just call, I need dirt, boom, there it is in the screener, and away we go. And when I say we, the guy that makes all this happen is sitting right here on my right arm for the last 4 years, Austin. Takes that skid steer and races it from place to place, and the idea is to keep the blocks coming, you know, and we can most of the time. The blue machine, these are both AECT machines made here in San Antonio. The big blue makes 360 an hour, and the little red makes about 300. They make different sizes. Blue makes 7x14s and 10x14s. Red makes 6x12s. So that's the deal, and you know, Charlie set up a fuel tank for us, and it's just got to do it, you know, and we're off and running. Next. We did a couple of workshops last summer. These little sheds are pump houses, really. Charlie owns a lake. Charlie's a developer, okay, and why is he interested in Adobe? I don't know, except he's just had this fascination with it his whole life. There's Austin leading the troops here at one of the workshops. But we managed to get, you know, the building up and plastered and go through all the steps. I'm going to plug our June workshop a little bit in Colorado, because we are going to take a building from the foundation through the finished plaster in 7 days, he said. Now, the building is quite small. It's an outhouse. Because we don't have one at the pit, and I thought, well, this is the perfect thing to do. Why should I go rent one of those plastic things? Let's build it. So the name of the workshop is BABS, B-A-B-S, Build a Brick Shit House. That's what we're going to do, start to finish. Rubble trench, soil selection, block making, plaster, barrel vault roof, and composting toilet. I forgot to bring a little printout about the composting toilet. We're going to composting toilet, obviously. Next. This was the most recent workshop in Campbell, Texas. Probably nobody knows where it is, but it's just east of Dallas, about an hour. Just got one going there, little tiny one. Next. Here's the screener at work. Isn't that amazing? You just don't know what that, there it is, coming out. And the stuff that rolls off, we can actually pick up and run through one more time, so it'll be a pretty good purchase. And then what we waste, early again, I'm body energy, Jim. What we waste, those piles that are too big, we just put in another big pile right down here and let them sit for the winter. And they get snowed on, they melt, and they dry out, and they break up pretty easy. So we're getting probably 80% purchase out of what we're getting. This is a layout of the plant. The acre, unfortunately, you know, it'd be nice if the two dimensions were fairly close together. As you can see, they're not. It's, you know, 80 feet wide and 500 feet long. But we've made it work. You know, we've got the Adobe Yard here. There's the screeners right here. They bring the dirt, put it right here. Austin puts it in the screener, takes it out of the screener, puts it in the mixer, gets the soil sand stabilizer water out of there. The block machine is actually right down here. black machine rollers onto the pallets and out. So it's pretty efficient, but it's real linear, real linear. We're going to make some changes this year and it'll be even better. That's the way it's working right now. Next. This one we made the blocks for last year, and the customer bought them already, and we're just waiting to put him on his foundation. He's going to build them in Castle Rock, Colorado. Just a little schematic of what's going on there. We can talk about our biggest challenge on this thing has been the energy code. We can talk about that a little bit if we have time right at the end. But let's move on, make sure we get through the slides here. Well, here it is, right here. We're working with 2 energy testing outfits, and you get a HERS score with this particular rating system. Energy Logic is the name of the company, and we're getting hurt. We're in the okay zone. Well, we know we're better than the okay zone. But the problem is, I think, and we have to prove this, right, Mike? That earthen walls, the computers that measure these things don't really get it. They're pushing a degree through a wall in a steady state, which doesn't really have anything to do with either nature or our walls. So we think we're getting shortchanged in the wall world. You can see, well, you probably can't see, it's too small, but we got here above grade walls for the energy system are 11. And that's with 2 inches of Roxol insulation on there, which is 8. So they're giving our 10-inch wall a 3. Yeah, there's some head shaking. Yeah, I feel the same way, So, but we have to prove otherwise, and we've got some people working on a pretty good group actually.
Is that our 3 continuous insulation, or is it?
No, the 3 is the earthen wall.
Yeah, but is it categorized as continuous insulation versus cavity insulation, which has a lower rating?
Oh no, it's not. It's continuous.
It should be continuous, right?
Yeah. Next. Here it is, build a brick shit house. So we laid this out because we're just trying to get as many people as we can, not because we want to make a lot of money, although that'd be nice, but we're trying to educate people. And so a 7-day workshop is pretty tough for a lot of people to come to. So we're giving a standard price if somebody comes for the whole 7 days. But then we've got these different, rubble trenches one day, block laying and window and door bucks another day, lintels and electrical and plumbing another day, bond beam, composting toilet, barrel vault, plaster. So people can come for 1 day. If they only want to see the barrel vault go up, they can come for day 6. So if you can find this on our Colorado Earth website if any of you are interested in coming to Colorado in June. It's real nice.
Sure.
Next. This is one that I built south of Durango, demonstrating that we're adaptable to different climates. Okay. So, questions?
Do the blocks crack with the snow?
Pardon?
Do the blocks crack with the snow?
Do they crack?
Yeah, will they get,
No, they
because
don't.
because they're sitting on there for a while, the water's sitting on them for a while.
Well, they're not sitting. The water's not sitting on
Not
the
water,
blocks.
but I
It's
mean
sitting on the plaster.
The snow.
The snow is sitting on the plaster, not on the blocks. I mean, it's
So that
being
protects-
held up by the blocks, but
Yeah. That protects.
we're not letting the blocks get wet. I'll get you just a second.
Curious.
They're fireproof, soundproof, bug-proof, bulletproof, all kinds of good stuff that you saw at the beginning. But if you don't stabilize them, they melt. And I've always wondered why you would leave that little Achilles heel on it. So we stabilize our blocks so that they don't melt. But the Achilles heel that does still exist is if they get wet and they freeze, they'll spall. You'll get pops coming off the front. So in a freeze-thaw climate, we always plaster. That's the answer to that. Yeah, you had a question?
I'm curious on a, say, 2,000 square foot home, which is modest, what would be the average cost for that with your?
I've got to give you all the caveats first, okay? Because there is no answer there.
No, I'm just curious.
Yeah.
As a
Well,
ballpark
we're a little more than a stick house because there's a lot of labor in the walls. Everything else is the same. They all have doors and windows and roofs and cabinets and plumbing and electrical and floor coverings and all that kind of stuff. So Walls, depending on the design, are 10 to 15% of the cost of the project. So the fact that our walls are a little more expensive than a stick wall, we think, although we're starting to wonder about that too. And I can go into that a little bit, but we're 10% more than a comparable stick house. Now, what does it cost? The caveats on that are, first of all, where are you? You know, okay, here, all right. But, you know, Texas and Colorado and California, the costs are very different, you know. The next thing that is a variable, a huge variable, is the design. You know, if it's a single-story rectangle, it's one thing. I built one in Colorado that was an ellipse, a two-story ellipse with a turret on the side, and they wanted to know why it cost so much. But the design is critical. And then the first variable, this isn't going to affect the cost of the house tremendously, but the first variable in the earth block thing is, where's your dirt? You know, the first thing we do is the dirt search. And maybe you have your own, or like in Colorado we've got our own, or maybe you're close to a quarry where you can get some overburden from the sand and gravel guys. But where's your soil coming from? How are you going to dig it? How are you going to process it? And how are you going to get it there is part of the cost of the block. And that varies radically. Now, the blocks, we're selling the blocks in Colorado for $2.52 each. And
Is it
depending,
Adobe and compressor block, same price?
pardon?
For Adobe or compressor block?
Compressed earth block.
Oh.
Yeah. And and even with that number, there's a couple of variables on what it's going to cost per square foot in the wall, because we make 10-inch walls and we make 14-inch walls and we make double walls. So depending on the wall system, and that's 10, 14, and double are going up in cost, all right? And so that's another variable. But $200 a square foot.
$200 a square foot, okay.
If it's a rectangle and it's a single story and we don't have to bring your soil from Houston.
Gotcha.
Now, those are ballparks, and I even hate to say it, because somebody will remember it. Bring me a set of plans.
Hold you to.
But you said,
But are you thinking interior, when you say that first, are you thinking interior partitions of earth too, or just exterior envelope?
this is a good question. I'm just shooting a ballpark out there, but Loran's a good question, and people always ask, well, do you do earth block walls on the inside also? Well, you don't have to. You know, you could frame the inside walls and probably go a little quicker and you'd save a little money, but then you'd have frame walls inside. You know, no soundproofing, they burn, bugs eat them, you know, I wouldn't do it. The other thing, the big thing there's two big things about the interior earthen walls. One is the soundproofing. If you're in the bedroom and there's a party going on in the living room, you can still sleep. You know, you can't hear it. So that's a huge one. And the other is, we talked about the breathability, you know, the ability to store and transfer water vapor or heat or whatever. So the interior walls are actually working better for you than the exterior walls. Because the exterior walls are fighting whatever's happening outside, whether it's, you know, 10 degrees in snow or whether it's 115 in Fredericksburg. You know, you're fighting the exterior temperature with the outside walls, whereas the inside walls are just, both sides are working for you as far as regulating your heat and humidity. Yes, ma'am.
What type of foundation does it have to be built on?
It can be built on several different kinds of foundations. You know, the standard is your standard concrete foundation. It needs to be engineered. Your foundation always needs to be engineered anyway, but it needs to be engineered because the walls are heavy. Our walls weigh 120 pounds per cubic foot, which is a lot more than a stick house. So you're going to have some adaptations to make in the foundation. And then the other thing about the foundation depends what you're building on. You know, how far do you have to go down to get bearing soil, or are you building on rock, or that sort of thing. But your standard foundation can work. Now, I'm a fan of another foundation called the rubble trench, which is, it doesn't sound good, but the rubble is actually ballast rock. And you dig the trench and you line it with garden fabric so it doesn't silt in, and you're doing this real simplified, but you pack in lifts of ballast rock. Ballast rock is, what is it, 3" minus or 3.5" minus, something like that. And the key thing about it is that, you know, a 3" rock is pretty good size, and then on down, it's variable in size. And it's sharp. It's not round, it's not river rock, it's sharp, so it'll lock together. The best example I can use of its effectiveness is what do they put under railroad tracks? Take a look at the railroad tracks. They're built on gravel. Well, that's because when that 400-ton train rolls over it, if it was concrete, it would crack. This foundation can't crack. It's gravel. Then we put a steel reinforced concrete grade beam on top of that we build on. Okay. Put a French drain in the bottom, depending on if you can daylight it out or you have to put it into a well or whatever.
Does
But it's
it
a lot
sound-
cheaper. Your point. If you have in Colorado, we have things like 42" frost line rules. You know, you got a 42" deep trench before you even get up to grade, and I've done it. I mean, you watch the truck pull up and dump 15, 20 yards of concrete in a hole in the ground, which has already been filled with several $1,000s worth of rebar tied and cages everywhere. Pack it full of gravel. Save a lot of money. The rubble trench was brought to the United States by what I like to say a little-known architect, Frank Lloyd Wright, who was traveling. And I heard the story two ways. I don't know if it was Scotland or it was the Middle East. I've heard it both ways. But he was looking at these massive masonry buildings, you know, thousands of years old, and he went, "There's no cracks in these. How can that be?" Well, we built on gravel. Well, of course we built on gravel. They didn't have any concrete. You know, and he went, "Gee, that's a good idea," and brought it back and did a lot of it here. I've done several of them. I've never been prohibited from doing so by any building department in Colorado or Texas. The Esperanza building that you saw earlier has a modified rubble trench. Mr. Donahue here was the engineer for that one. And we had gravel, and then we had a little stem wall that came up from that. So it's kind of a little bit of both.
Is there any give to the floor at all, or is it gonna be pretty much I've
Well,
had back
the-
surgery, so I'm looking for pier and beam with give.
Okay, well, the floor, see, we're talking about two different things. I'm talking about the perimeter foundation, and you're talking about the floor
Yeah.
that you're gonna walk on.
Right.
Okay, the floor can be anything you want. If you want a frame floor, and that's a good idea. Our old friend John Maroney, no longer with us, wrote an article that I just love called "Slamming the Slab," and it's just line after line after line about what's wrong with a concrete slab for a floor. And the embodied energy be one, but more importantly to people my age is your ankles and your hips and your knees and everything else. You know, you walk around on concrete all the time, it hurts. With a wooden floor on joists, it's an imperceptible give, but you get some give and you don't hurt as badly. But you can do a wooden floor in an earth block building. You know, you bring the stem wall up, you hang the eye joist on the side of it, and you run your joist across, and you put your subfloor on it. You got a wood floor.
What
Not an
about
issue.
What about an earthen floor?
What about an earthen floor?
Instead of the concrete?
Just
Earth.
cost.
Well,
Compressed earth.
yeah, you can do an earthen floor. I love them. They're becoming increasingly popular in every country except this one. They've got a beautiful earthen floor over at Esperanza.
Yeah, I saw that.
And Kendra Welch, I think, was the driving force behind that. She's like the local Guru S or whatever. You know. It's a beautiful floor. It's unbelievable. But it's hard. You know, I mean, I'm real impressed with how hard it is. The enemy of earthen floors typically is women in high heels, because the amount of pressure on that half-inch is unbelievable. You know, so he makes little dents in earthen floor, but I don't think it's going to dent Kendra's floor. But as far as the give that you were talking about,
Yeah, but
I don't think there's any give.
No
No.
give.
But there's another benefit, maybe, to earthen floors. I say maybe because it is or it isn't, but the jury's out, okay? I read a book called Earthing, which talked
yeah.
about
There you go.
the fact that we are, and this part's true, this isn't a debate, we're just a bunch of electrons firing around mostly air and water between them, and we're barely here. You know what I mean? But those electrons, the Earth is doing the same thing. It's a mass of, you know, frequencies or whatever. And the guy that wrote the book was real sick for a long time, had seen hundreds of doctors, couldn't get well, was sitting on a park bench in Sedona, Arizona, feeling sorry for himself, and saw everybody walking by on the concrete sidewalk with their neoprene shoes. And he went, we never touch the ground anymore. And he took his shoes off and he got well, just walking around on the planet. So he started looking into it, and then he got a couple of scientists to do some research on it. It's a real interesting book. Whether you buy it or not, it's up to you, but it's pretty convincing. It's called Earthing, the book. So if you believe in that, then that's a huge benefit. Huge. Yes, sir.
Jim, you spoke to the breathability of the wall.
Mhm.
Could you also speak to the humidity factor? If it's humid outside, would it come in?
Yeah, well, that's kind of what the breathability is about. It's. I should probably let Mike get up here and talk about it because he knows more about it than anybody in the room. But there's water vapor. Water vapor molecules are the same size as air. We're not talking about water now. When I mentioned the breathable slide, and breathable is kind of a misnomer, but it's common in the industry to use it. But in that slide, I mentioned it's like your skin. You know, you're constantly passing water vapor in and out of your skin 24/7, but you don't. If you walk out in the rain, you don't fill up with water. You know, you're waterproof, but you're breathable. Your skin's breathable. It's the same thing with these walls. They'll take in humidity and they'll let it out, depending on what their equilibrium moisture content is compared to what's out here or out there. Now, if you're in a real hot, humid climate, you know, we can get overwhelmed. You know, and what I want to point out is that when you ask, when people wonder about, well, how come I still need a dehumidifier? You know, if I've got, well, if you're in Houston, you know, gee whiz, we're almost magic, but we're not magic. You know, and what you have to measure when you're looking at that sort of thing, and what people usually use to measure, how much does it cost me to stay comfortable? Right? And so you want to take that number over a 365-day period, okay? So when it's not so hot and it's not so cold, you're spending nothing, you know? The Charles Kavanaugh, the guy that I mentioned in the Wimberley house, he's spending next to nothing on utilities. But he did lots of things right. And he's still in the humid zone. Wimberley, that's for sure. And he doesn't have an air conditioner. None of these houses in Texas that I've built have central air. They've got mini splits or something, and their air conditioning costs are a fraction of their kindling neighbors. You had a question, sir?
You know, I really believe in earth bricks. I think they make a beautiful wall. A lot of times interior, you don't even want to cover them up. They have a great look already. You know, I really think that they do keep the house much cooler than any conventional home that's built nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're saying something about the cost per square foot. I don't believe that the cost of an earth brick home would cost more, because throughout a year's worth of time,
Good
the
point.
energy that you put into a home over the time of a year, or let's say 10 years, or summer, winter, fall, I mean, you name it, your AC's on and
I'm
then your
taking you
heater's
with me.
on. So,
You make your money back.
yes.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true, and I usually mention that, you know, 'cause when you answer the cost question, usually you're answering, it's an American question, and when they say cost, they're talking about end of their nose, turnkey walk-in, what did it cost to build?
But in the long run.
Yes.
In the long run, we're the cheapest thing on the market, no doubt about it, because you're gonna spend so much less on energy
It's
and
a
maintenance.
run.
There's actually no end cost to a traditional wood home. There is no end cost to a traditional wood home, because you end up putting trim, primer, plaster, tape and float, the coating, the paint, you know, the cleanup, the cost, and having the time that it takes to do all that is never included in a normal wall.
Right.
When you really think about it, we just think of material-wise, and
Yeah.
anyways, we
Well,
always
and
try and
that's-
think
and
this
that's- and that's
quickest
why,
way.
that's
It's
why I
not
said,
that
when we
true.
talked about that, I said, we're more expensive than a stick wall, maybe, and we're working on that, and it's getting closer and closer. If we're not cheaper already, we're going to be, because the cost of lumber goes up, the cost of caulking goes up, the cost of paint goes up, the cost of insulation goes up, the cost of sheetrock goes up, blah, blah, blah. There's no futures on dirt, you know, it's pretty standard stuff. The other thing that the cost comparison involves on a stick house, let's start with the earth house. Our guys make the blocks, stack the blocks, plaster the walls. Okay? It's the same guys, you know, not always, but has been frequently. With a stick wall, you know, you start with the framers, then you got the siding guys, and you got the insulators, and you got the sheetrockers, the tapers, the painters, the trim carpenter. You got 7 trades hit the wall, you know, and we're just doing dirt, top to bottom. And we're plastering with, I urge everybody to plaster the inside with clay, because I get a question all the time, well, do you fur out the inside and put some sheetrock up? No, you know, don't do that. And, you know, well, can I paint it? No, you don't want to paint it. You know, A, it won't stick, but B, you've just stopped that breathability. You just put an impermeable surface on one of the best benefits of a wall, you know? So you don't paint. And the clay plasters now, you can make your own. They're spectacular. American Clay is a product that I love. The Treehouse in Austin has it, and it's just beautiful. You know, any color of the rainbow, pretty much.
We just did that, and it's fabulous.
Pardon?
So easy. Credit card size,
Put
it on there.
A layer.
you just
That's right.
mix it, put your color in, and it was so much easier. No mess, non-toxic, easy cleanup.
I'm taking
It was
pictures.
incredible.
Yeah. If you got it on your hands, it would come right off. It's not like paint. Just the cleanup, just the brushes of paint alone,
Yeah.
you spend a fortune in just brushes,
But this was fabulous.
taping, the paper, the tape, the plastic, the pan.
They know.
I was just, about a year ago, I got a call from Judy, the Bastrop one, and they had a leak come through the window. And it was the interior was American Clay,
Yes.
and it was discolored and it was cracked, and so I called John Meekum. I called John, the guru of American Clay, right? And I said, come help me. He said, you don't need me. He said, just get a soft sponge, soak it, wring it out till it's as dry as you can get it, and rub the wall. This is the easiest wall to patch in the world. It's unbelievable.
I just want to mention also that wall, prior to putting it in, the house would want to stay hot during the winter, the temperature. But now that I put it in, it's actually staying around 65, 70 degrees. It just wants to stay that cool inside the house. And it's in this extreme temperature. I don't have an AC duct or anything, and it's already showing its benefits of the that wants to
So
stay
you live in an
65 degrees. I'm brand new here in Texas. I hate the weather. I can't believe it. I'm sticky right now, and it's nighttime.
You hate the weather now? You better run. You come with me to Colorado.
You
next
know,
month.
I'm a home builder and a designer. I'm a design builder. I have a house in California. I don't have to be in this hot weather.
Yeah, well, it's hot here, but I love Texas. I do. And this is why, right here. Good folks.
Do you
Yes,
have
ma'am.
pictures of how you put in the electricity and the plumbing in these houses?
Well, you know, I get that question all the time. So Austin and I built this. Are we running out of time here, Lorraine? We gotta get out of it.
It's 8.
Yeah.
That works all right. You can answer this last question, I think.
I can answer this
We
last
just don't wanna
question.
overstay
So we
our
get this
welcome
question all the
and
time.
it's,
So Austin and I built this little model. Now there's 4 or 5 ways to put in the electrical. This is one, okay? And 1 and 2 are real similar. 3, 4, and 5 are different. But this is, what we have here is this wall, this is a 6 by 12 block. Okay, it's made by Little Red. And so this is a 12-inch wall that we're looking at, okay? And on the course where all the receptacles are, which is the same height everywhere, pretty much, 12 inches is the standard, it's not a code, you can put them in the floor. I love it when they put them in the floor. But this is called the 4-square electrical box, and you set it, there's no guesswork about where to put it in and out, you put it right to the edge of the block, okay, every time. Because you're gonna put some plaster on here. Well, how thick is the plaster gonna be? Well, they sell, this piece is called a plaster ring. And they come in from dead flat out to about 3/4. And so you buy the right size plaster ring, you put it on there, and then when the finish plaster is running its trial up there, it should go ting ting, right over that, and it's perfectly flat. Receptacle goes right where it's supposed to, the cover plate fits right against the wall, everything's hunky-dory. The way I fasten it in there, I want this to be real stout, okay? So what I do is take this little piece of 2x4, put it behind the box, screw through the box into the 2x4, screw the 2x4 down to the block. The blocks will hold a nail or screw just as well or better than wood. So, in fact, we had some in Oklahoma that were too hard, we couldn't screw into. I looked at it and I said, how much cement did you put in? But, so this gets screwed in here, all your boxes are up, and then in this instance we have UF wire, direct burial wire. This is one system, and so we just run a groove, as you can see right here, down the wall, which is a skill saw with a diamond blade, or the wood blade turned backwards works too, and we run it down there a few times and then chip it out so that the wire, when it comes out of here, will sit perfectly flat in that little groove. You see it? Okay, then we staple it down, and then boom, next row of blocks goes over.
All the way through,
Pardon?
all the way through the house like that.
All the way through the house for the receptacles. Now, the other things, of course, is you have switches, okay? But they're always, almost always, unless somebody wasn't thinking, they're by a door. Okay, you walk in the door, you turn on the light switch, it's like that. So this wire is coming up the side of the door buck. You get up to 48 inches, you poke it out, you get there, put the box in. Come out of the box, keep going up into wherever your source is, okay? We did one in Mexico where all the electrical was in the floor. They were gonna do an earthen floor, which was great. This is another advantage of earthen floors. I think they did that at Esperanza too, didn't they? Did they go on the floor? Yeah. And they put the conduit in the floor, just ran it up the wall, 6 inches, and that was it. Another way to do it is to just build a chase somewhere and take everything up there into your roof or your ceiling or whatever to get down to the lights. If you're using conduit, it's the same system right here, except the skinny groove right here isn't there. You put the conduit right on top of the block, and then we cut a deeper groove in the next block and we set it over the conduit. Okay. The increasing popularity, but maybe the trickiest of the electrical stuff are sconces, because they're out there in the middle of nowhere. They're out high and they're out in the wall, and so we typically go up through a chase somewhere and across the ceiling or around the bond beam or whatever and come down to the sconces, because you're only coming down a few inches from the bond beam, so it's not very far to go. When you're doing that kind of stuff, we put into the technical here, we put PVC sleeves in the bond beam before we pour it, so that we don't have to drill through the bond beam with a roller hammer, and we can just run the wire down. Is that enough electrical?
Well, it's some when you have to fixing, but we don't have time. If you have to fix it, you have to break through your wall. You have to
Well, if you put in
break through your floor.
No, if you put in conduit, you can pull the wire out and
Pull.
put new wire in.
Okay.
That's the, yeah, and I get that a lot. What if I want to pull wire later? I've been building for 40 years. I've never seen anybody pull wire later. I don't. I guess some people do. I get the question all the time, and I've never seen it happen.
Protection lighting, or the kitchen lights are nowadays the warm water, then when the ceiling lights or whatever. What do you do, like to put cables in later afterwards?
If you were doing what, like track lights or something? Is that it?
Yeah, or these
Something
outside
different, you
lights.
wanna modernize your house, right?
If you want
Well, the
modernize-
lights are coming through the ceiling, you know, and sometimes it's an earth block ceiling, but not usually. Yeah, right. So that's just standard electrical stuff. Yes, sir.
You know, I've seen other Adobe bricks very similar to yours. I actually built a home with Adobe bricks. Some Adobe bricks have a little porthole. Have you considered maybe modifying your brick to have that porthole? You can actually put a rebar in there and fill it with concrete. Or, you know, because concrete has that real sturdy, it doesn't want to move kind of.
Yeah. Well, that's what we do.
There's just simple little ideas out there that
Yeah.
it would actually help out, especially when you're dropping line or plumbing. Since you know how to build a house, you know what it's like to
Yeah.
drop some plumbing, what it's like to drop some line.
Mhm.
You want to make sure no one's gonna hit it,
Right.
nothing else is gonna affect it.
Well, that's another benefit of this system. I mean, the wire's in the middle of the wall. If you have a 14-inch wall, all your electrical is 7 inches deep, whether you're inside or outside. You're never going to hit it with a nail.
Right.
You know, it's not going to happen. And then what was the other comment you just made?
Interlocking maybe too would be great.
Oh, the holy blocks. Well, the whole,
You plaster
no offense to
everything
the
up? Is
Christians
that
here.
what you do you have to mason them together with the mason?
We put mortar in them. We get the question all the time, well, can't I dry stack? Can if you want, but it's just a real bad idea.
Yeah. Okay, we have time for about one more question. We can kind of
Okay.
wrap up.
Yes, sir.
All right, it's 2 questions.
That's okay.
The first question, and I might have missed the first part of your presentation, but what is the difference between like a traditional brick material? I know brick is kiln dried, and there's a lot of embodied energy there. Do you sun dry your blocks?
We sun dry the Adobes because they're mud and forms and they dry in the sun. That's how they're made. With our press blocks, we don't sun dry them. In
So that's
fact,
just compression, pure
it's
compression.
compression, and we get them on a pallet and moist and covered as fast as we can. We
Wow.
want them to stay in a cool, moist environment so that the stabilizer will hydrate.
Yeah.
You know, if it's baked out in the sun, then it doesn't work.
Yeah.
You know, so that's, what was the other question?
The other question is, you mentioned hurricane and tornado, like just natural disaster kind of resistance. Are you seeing? I know there's aerated concrete blocks. There's a company called Baltex, and they've been targeting a lot of like Rockport and hurricane hit areas with this last big storm. Are you seeing any kind of influx of business from the coast?
I haven't, unfortunately. They should. You really can't blow them down. I didn't put the slide in this one, but we have a slide that we got from Lawrence Jetter at AECT of a house going up. It was in Alabama, I thought.
Will the humidity mess with either the blocks or the Adobe bricks at all?
No. But this picture that Lawrence has is it's one of his biggest machines. It's called a 5000. He didn't make it anymore. It's a 7,000 or 8,000 pound machine, right? And it's out in this field in Alabama, and they're making earth blocks. And you can see in the picture, you can see the house walls up. The house isn't done, but all the walls are up. And here's the machine. A tornado came through, and it picked up that 8,000 pound machine and rolled it across the field. The thing is just mangled. It didn't phase the house. It didn't phase the house.
Thanks for coming, everybody. We'd like to invite you to learn more about Earthen Construction Initiative. We have a website now. It's earthenci.org. Learn all you want about us and also how to sign up to become members of our nonprofit organization. We'd like to have you join us.